You're 7 years old, sitting in a classroom full of children your age. They're playing, laughing, obsessed with toys and games and simple pleasures. And you're sitting there feeling something you don't have words for yet, something like exhaustion, like you've done this all before, like you're ancient in a body that's barely begun. The teacher asks what you want to be when you grow up. Other kids shout excited answers: astronaut, firefighter, princess. You can't answer because the question feels wrong, like it's missing something fundamental, like there's a deeper question beneath it that no one else can hear. You look around and think, why does no one else feel this weight? Why does everything feel so heavy to me and so light to them? Why do I feel like I'm remembering something I've never learned? You're different. You've always been different. And for years you thought something was wrong with you, that you were broken, too serious, unable to just be normal and happy like everyone else. But Carl Jung understood something that changes everything. You're not broken. You're old, not old in body, old in soul, carrying wisdom, memories, and weight that transcends this single lifetime. Jung spent decades studying what he called the collective unconscious, the shared reservoir of human experience, ancestral memory, and ancient knowledge that some people access more deeply than others. And he believed, though he was careful about saying it publicly, that some souls carry more than just ancestral memory. They carry the actual weight of previous lifetimes, the accumulated experience of having lived, died, learned, and returned, again and again and again. You're one of those souls, an old soul, not metaphorically, literally. Your consciousness has traveled through more than one body, more than one era, more than one identity, and that accumulated experience makes you fundamentally different from people living their first or second lifetime. That difference doesn't just make you feel out of place, it makes people fear you, not consciously, not deliberately, but instinctively, because something in their young souls recognizes, this person has seen things I haven't, knows things I don't, carries weight I can't comprehend. This video will reveal the 12 signs you're an old soul that most people fear, not so you can feel superior, but so you can finally understand why you've never fit in, why your presence unsettles people, why you've spent your entire life feeling homesick for places you've never been and exhausted by a world that's supposed to feel new. Because here's what Jung discovered. Old souls don't belong to this era. They belong to all of them. And people who are living their first lifetime can sense that ancient energy even if they can't name it. It reminds them of their own mortality, their own limited perspective, their own lack of depth. So they fear you. Not your body, your soul. And if you've made it this far, if something in that opening resonated so deeply it hurt, you already know. You're one of the ancient ones, and this message is for you. The psychology of the old soul. Before we explore the 12 signs, you need to understand Carl Jung's framework for why old souls exist and why they're so rare. Jung believed that consciousness doesn't end with death, that the psyche, the totality of who you are, continues beyond the body. He studied Eastern philosophy, particularly Buddhism and Hinduism, which teach reincarnation as fundamental truth. He explored alchemy, which is essentially the study of spiritual transformation across lifetimes. He wrote extensively in his Red Book about encounters with ancient wisdom that seemed to come from beyond his personal experience. But Jung was a scientist operating in a Western materialist culture, so he was careful. He spoke about the collective unconscious, the inherited psychological material shared by all humanity. He talked about archetypal memory, the wisdom of ancestors encoded in our psyche. But privately, in his Red Book, in conversations with spiritual teachers, in his later writings, he acknowledged something more. Some people access this collective unconscious more directly. Some people carry memories that feel personal but predate their birth. Some people seem to have wisdom they couldn't have learned in one lifetime. These are the old souls, people who have lived before, who have died before, who have learned lessons across multiple incarnations and carry that accumulated wisdom in their current form. Here's what happens to consciousness across lifetimes. According to Jung's framework, each lifetime teaches specific lessons, presents specific challenges, offers specific growth. When the body dies, the soul, the consciousness, the psyche carries those lessons forward, not as memories of specific events necessarily, but as accumulated wisdom, intuitive knowing, deep patterns of understanding. Young souls, people in their first few lifetimes, are learning basic lessons: how to survive, how to fit in, how to succeed in material terms. They're focused on the external world because the internal world is still new, still being developed. But old souls have lived enough lifetimes to learn those lessons, so they come into each new lifetime with that wisdom already integrated. They don't need to learn how to survive. They've survived 100 times. They don't need to learn how to fit in. They've fit in and rebelled and everything in between. So they focus on different questions. Why am I here again? What's the purpose of consciousness? What lies beyond the material world? What really matters when everything else is temporary? These questions unsettle young souls, because young souls aren't ready for them. They're still trying to figure out how to be successful, how to be loved, how to be safe. Old soul questions feel dangerous to people still focused on young soul lessons, and that creates fear. The fear you've felt directed at you your entire life. The fear that makes people uncomfortable in your presence, even when you're being perfectly kind. The fear that tells you, you don't belong here. They're right. You don't belong to this era. You belong to the continuum of consciousness itself. And that's exactly what frightens them. Sign number 1. You've felt ancient since childhood. This is the foundational sign, the one that separates old souls from people who just developed philosophical interests later in life. You didn't become deep. You were born deep. At 5, 6, 7 years old, you felt things other children didn't feel, saw things they didn't see, asked questions that made adults uncomfortable. While other kids were obsessed with the latest toy, you were staring at the stars, wondering why anything exists at all. While they were crying about scraped knees, you were contemplating death with a seriousness that scared your parents. Jung called this consciousness beyond chronological age, the soul's age superseding the body's age. You carried ancient eyes in a child's face, and people could sense it, even if they didn't understand it. Here's what this looked like in your childhood. You preferred talking to adults over playing with peers, not because you were trying to be mature, but because adult conversations felt more natural to you. Children's games felt hollow, meaningless, like play acting at life when you already understood life was more complex than that. You experienced intense nostalgia for things you'd never experienced, longing for eras you'd never lived in, at least not in this body. Victorian England, ancient Greece, medieval monasteries, places and times that called to you like memories, even though logically you'd never been there. You understood emotional complexity adults thought you were too young to grasp. When your parents fought, you understood both sides. When someone died, you didn't just feel sad, you contemplated mortality, meaning, what comes after. Adults found this disturbing. Kids shouldn't think about these things. But you couldn't help it, because your soul wasn't a kid. Your soul had seen death dozens of times, had lost loved ones in previous lifetimes, had contemplated existence across centuries. This ancient quality in childhood is the clearest sign, because it's not learned, it's not developed, it's carried from before. Sign number 2, you're exhausted by this era's values. Every generation has its obsessions, its values, its definition of what matters, and you've never shared them. When everyone around you cares about social media followers, career status, designer brands, the latest trends, you feel nothing, not superiority, exhaustion, like watching children get excited about shiny objects while missing everything that actually matters. Jung wrote about what he called temporal displacement, when someone's values don't match their era because their consciousness was shaped by different eras. You carry values from other times, other cultures, other ways of being human. Here's how this manifests. Modern obsession with productivity and optimization feels insane to you. The idea that every moment must be monetized, every hobby must become a side hustle, every experience must be documented and shared. Your soul remembers times when simply existing was enough, when sitting under a tree for hours wasn't wasting time, but living fully. The focus on external achievement over internal development baffles you. People spending decades climbing corporate ladders while never examining who they actually are. People collecting accomplishments like trophies while their souls remain completely undeveloped. The superficiality of modern connection exhausts you. Small talk, networking, transactional relationships. Your soul remembers deeper bonds, connections that lasted lifetimes, conversations that went straight to the core without wasting time on performance. You watch people chase things that won't matter when they die, and you know they won't matter because you've died before. You've left bodies behind. You've discovered firsthand that status, possessions, reputation, none of it transfers. Only wisdom, only love, only consciousness. This knowing makes you fundamentally incompatible with modern values, and people sense that incompatibility. They sense that you see through what they're chasing, that you know it's empty, that your lack of enthusiasm exposes their desperate pursuit as the distraction it is. So they fear you. Because if what you know is true, if all this striving is meaningless, then they've wasted their entire life, and that possibility is too terrifying to face. Sign number 3, solitude feels like home, not punishment. Most people fear being alone. They fill every moment with noise, distraction, social interaction. Silence makes them uncomfortable. Solitude makes them anxious. But you, solitude is where you breathe, where you remember who you are beneath the roles you're forced to play, where you connect to something deeper than this lifetime. This isn't introversion. Introverts recharge alone but still crave connection. You don't just recharge in solitude, you return to your natural state. You remember. Jung wrote extensively about the necessity of solitude for accessing the deeper layers of the psyche. He spent years in relative isolation, writing his Red Book, exploring his unconscious. He understood that old souls need solitude, not to escape the world, but to access the parts of themselves that transcend it. Here's what your relationship with solitude reveals. You can sit in silence for hours without discomfort, not distracting yourself with screens or music or activity, just being, existing, thinking, feeling, remembering. This terrifies people who can't be alone with themselves for 5 minutes. You prefer depth over breadth in relationships. You'd rather have 2 deep connections than 50 shallow ones. Quality over quantity. Because your soul remembers what real intimacy feels like, and modern friendship doesn't come close. You feel most yourself when alone, not performing, not adjusting to others' energy, not translating your ancient knowing into language young souls can handle. Just being the accumulation of everything you've learned across lifetimes. People interpret this as aloofness, arrogance, being too good for others. But it's not that. It's that your soul has lived enough social lives to know most human interaction is performance, theater. And after dozens of lifetimes, you're tired of the show. This comfort with solitude threatens people who need constant external validation, because your self-sufficiency implies they don't need what they think they need. That happiness doesn't require constant connection, that you can be whole, complete, at peace, entirely alone. And that possibility that they've been chasing connection to avoid themselves terrifies them. Sign number 4, you're drawn to ancient wisdom over modern knowledge. Modern education bores you. Self-help trends feel shallow. The latest psychological frameworks seem like rebranded ancient concepts with fancier language. but give you Marcus Aurelius, Lao Tzu, the Bhagavad Gita, Buddhist sutras, Stoic philosophy, mystical poetry, and something in you awakens, not learns, remembers. Jung called this accessing the collective unconscious through symbolic resonance. Ancient wisdom uses language, symbols, and frameworks that connect directly to deeper layers of psyche, layers that transcend individual experience. For old souls, reading ancient texts feels like coming home, like someone finally speaking your language after years of translation. Here's how this manifests. You read something written 2,000 years ago and think, yes, exactly. Finally, someone understands. Meanwhile, modern books on the same topic feel shallow, oversimplified, missing the depth the ancient text captured effortlessly. You're drawn to timeless questions over temporary concerns. Not, how do I get promoted? But what is the nature of suffering? Not, how do I find a partner? But what is the purpose of human connection across lifetimes? You recognize patterns across eras and cultures, different languages, different symbols, but the same essential truths. Your soul has encountered these truths before, in other forms, other contexts. So you don't just learn them, you recognize them. This preference for ancient over modern unsettles people, because it implies that progress is an illusion, that humanity knew essential truths thousands of years ago that we've forgotten in our obsession with innovation. Your respect for ancient wisdom says, we haven't improved. We've just gotten louder. And people who've invested their identity in modernity, progress, and innovation find that message threatening. Sign number 5. Your presence either deeply calms or deeply unsettles. People, there's no middle ground with you. People either feel instantly safe in your presence, like they can finally breathe, finally be real, or they feel intensely uncomfortable and can't explain why. This polarizing effect isn't about your behavior. You can be perfectly polite, perfectly appropriate, but your energy creates strong reactions regardless. Jung understood this as the old soul's psychic weight. Your presence carries accumulated lifetimes. That weight is palpable, and people respond to it viscerally, unconsciously. Here's what's happening energetically. People who are ready for depth feel your presence as permission. Permission to stop performing, to be real, to acknowledge the heavy questions they've been avoiding. You create space for authenticity because you're not invested in maintaining social illusions. But people who aren't ready for that depth feel your presence as threat, as exposure. Your energy says, the game isn't real. The performance is exhausting. There's more to existence than this. And people still clinging to the game feel that message as attack. You've probably noticed, children and animals are drawn to you. They sense your old soul energy as safe, calm, grounded. Meanwhile, highly performative adults, people whose entire identity is image, avoid you or become hostile. This isn't your fault. You're not doing anything to create this polarization. Your accumulated consciousness simply creates a field that forces people to choose authenticity or performance, depth or shallowness, reality or illusion. Most people aren't ready to choose reality, so they choose to fear you instead. Sign number 6, you see through social masks instantly. When someone's performing, putting on an act, faking enthusiasm, lying about their feelings, you see it immediately. Not as judgment, as simple perception, like seeing colors or hearing sounds. The mask is just obvious to you. This isn't about being cynical or assuming everyone's fake. It's about having lived enough lifetimes to recognize performance versus authenticity instinctively. Jung wrote about the persona, the social mask we all wear. He believed psychological health requires knowing where the mask ends and the authentic self begins. But most people have lost that distinction. They've worn the mask so long they think it's their face. Old souls never lose that distinction, because you've worn different masks in different lifetimes. You've been different genders, different social classes, different cultural identities. So you understand viscerally, the mask is not the self. Here's how this plays out. Someone tells you they're fine. Their words say fine, their face says fine. But you feel the sadness, the fear, the desperation beneath it, not through psychic ability, through accumulated experience of human emotion across lifetimes. You watch social dynamics and see the power plays, the manipulations, the unspoken contracts everyone pretends don't exist. While others take conversations at face value, you see the subtext, the performance, the game. This ability to see through masks makes people profoundly uncomfortable, because being truly seen without the mask feels vulnerable. Most people have spent years perfecting their performance. Your instant perception threatens to expose it, so they avoid you, or they call you too perceptive, too intense, reading too much into things. Because acknowledging that you see clearly means acknowledging they're hiding, and that's too uncomfortable for most people to face. Your ancient eyes see too much, and people fear being seen. Sign number 7, you experience unexplainable knowing. You know things you've never learned, not in this lifetime. You meet someone and instantly know they're trustworthy or dangerous, and you're always right. You face a situation and know the outcome before it unfolds. You understand complex truths without needing them explained. Jung called this intuition from the collective unconscious. But for old souls, it's more specific, memory. Not from this life, from previous ones. Your soul has lived through similar situations before, met similar people, faced similar choices. So when patterns repeat, your soul recognizes them before your conscious mind catches up. Here's how unexplainable knowing manifests. You experience intense déjà vu, not just, I've been here before, but specific, detailed recognition. You walk into a building you've never visited and know exactly where the stairs are. You visit a city for the first time and navigate like you've lived there for years. You have sudden downloads of information. Not learning something new, but remembering something you somehow already knew. Concepts clicking into place with a sense of, oh right, I knew that. You dream of places, people, and eras you've never encountered in this lifetime. Dreams that feel more like memories than imagination. Dreams that carry emotional weight beyond what this life has given you. This knowing unnerves people because it can't be explained rationally. And people who live entirely in the rational material world find anything unexplainable threatening. Your intuition, your soul's accumulated wisdom, operates beyond logic. And logic-bound people fear what they can't rationalize away. Sign number 8, material success feels empty without meaning. You might be successful by conventional standards, good job, financial stability, nice home. But none of it satisfies you. Not because you're ungrateful, because your soul knows this isn't why you're here. Young souls chase material success because they're learning basic lessons about survival, security, accomplishment. But old souls have learned those lessons in previous lifetimes. So achieving them again doesn't feel like progress. It feels like repeating a grade you've already passed. Jung wrote about what he called the second half of life crisis, when material success no longer provides meaning and people turn inward seeking purpose. But for old souls, that crisis comes earlier, sometimes in childhood, because you've already lived the second half of life in previous incarnations. Here's how this manifests. You achieve something others dream of, promotion, award, recognition, and feel nothing. Not joy, not satisfaction, just emptiness. Like checking a box on a list that doesn't actually matter. You look at wealthy, successful people and feel pity, not envy, because you can see they're chasing something that won't fulfill them. Your soul remembers dying rich and dying poor, and discovering that wealth means nothing when the body falls away. You crave purpose over prosperity. You'd rather have meaningful work that pays little than meaningless work that pays well. This baffles people who've organized their entire life around material accumulation. Your indifference to material success threatens people whose entire identity is built on achievement. Because if success is empty, if accomplishment doesn't bring fulfillment, then what's the point of their relentless striving? They can't face that question. So they fear the person who embodies the answer, you. The old soul who knows from experience that meaning transcends material. If these signs are resonating deeply, drop ancient in the comments, because the next signs reveal exactly why old souls struggle so much in the modern world. Sign number 9. You're naturally empathetic to others' hidden pain. You don't just sense surface emotions. You feel the deep pain people carry, the pain they hide from everyone, sometimes even themselves. The childhood wound, the unprocessed grief, the shame they've never spoken aloud. This isn't learned empathy. It's recognition. Your soul has carried similar pain in previous lifetimes. So when you encounter it in others, you recognize it like a familiar face. Jung understood that the psyche carries wounds across time, that unresolved trauma doesn't disappear with death. It transfers, seeking resolution in future lifetimes. Old souls, having lived through more experiences, have encountered more varieties of suffering. So when someone's suffering, even when they're hiding it perfectly, your soul recognizes the pattern. I know that pain. I've carried that pain. I remember what that feels like. Here's how this deep empathy shows up. People tell you their secrets without knowing why. Within minutes of meeting you, they're confessing things they've never told anyone. Because your energy says, I understand. I won't judge. I've been through worse. You can feel others' pain even when they're smiling. While everyone else believes the performance, you sense the suffering beneath it. Not through psychic ability, but through pattern recognition across lifetimes. You carry emotional weight that isn't yours. You absorb others' pain without intending to. Because your soul remembers what it's like to suffer alone and instinctively offers to share the burden. This empathy exhausts you. Because in a world full of suffering, people hiding behind masks, you're constantly aware of the pain others pretend doesn't exist. It's like having vision when everyone else is blind. You can't unsee what you see. People fear this empathy because being seen in your pain, truly seen, is vulnerable. Most people prefer their suffering remain invisible. Your ability to see it anyway feels invasive, even when your intention is compassionate. Sign number 10, you feel nostalgia for places you've never been. You see images of ancient temples, medieval villages, Victorian libraries, Japanese gardens, and you don't just think they're beautiful. You feel homesick, longing, recognition, like some part of you lived there and still remembers. This isn't romantic imagination. This is soul memory, places you inhabited in previous lifetimes, calling to something in you that transcends this body. Jung studied what he called psychic imprints, the way certain places, symbols, and images resonate with the unconscious because they connect to ancestral or past life memory. For old souls, this resonance is powerful, specific, and often inexplicable. Here's how this manifests. Certain eras fascinate you obsessively, not as historical interest, but as visceral pull. You research the clothing, the architecture, the daily life of that time, not to learn, but to remember. You visit a place for the first time and feel you've returned home. The landscape feels familiar, the energy feels right. You can't explain it logically, but your body relaxes in a way it never does in the place you actually grew up. You collect objects from different eras, antiques, traditional crafts, historical replicas, not for decoration, but because they feel like yours, like reclaiming belongings from a previous life. This longing for other times and places makes you feel displaced in your current life, like you were born in the wrong era, like you belong somewhere, somewhen else. People find this unsettling because it implies that this modern world, this current era, isn't the pinnacle of human existence, that maybe previous times had something valuable we've lost, that progress isn't linear. Your nostalgia for places you've never been says, I've seen what we had and what we've lost, and people invested in believing right now is the best time to be alive can't handle that message. Sign number 11. You're comfortable with existential questions. Others avoid. Most people avoid the big questions. What's the purpose of existence? Why is there something instead of nothing? What happens after death? What is consciousness? They avoid these questions because they're uncomfortable, destabilizing, without clear answers, so people stay focused on immediate, answerable questions. What should I have for dinner? What show should I watch? What should I post on social media? But you can't avoid the big questions. They're always there, humming beneath the surface of your awareness. Not as crisis, but as constant inquiry. Your soul needs to explore these depths the way bodies need to breathe. Jung believed that engagement with existential questions was essential for psychological wholeness, that avoiding them created neurosis, restlessness, a sense of life's meaninglessness. But most people would rather remain neurotic than face the uncertainty of philosophical inquiry. Here's how your comfort with existential questions shows up. You regularly contemplate death without fear. Not morbidly, naturally. You think about what happens when consciousness leaves the body, where it goes, what it means. This contemplation brings peace, not anxiety. You question everything, morality, purpose, meaning, reality itself. Not cynically, genuinely. You want to understand what's real beneath the construct society has created. You can sit with uncertainty. Most people need definitive answers to feel safe. You're comfortable with, I don't know, and maybe there is no answer. Your soul has lived long enough to know that mystery is part of existence. This philosophical comfort unnerves people desperately clinging to certainty. To them, your willingness to question everything feels dangerous. If nothing is certain, if everything can be questioned, then their entire worldview becomes unstable. So they avoid you, or they call you too dark, too negative, overthinking everything. Because acknowledging your questions means confronting their own existential anxiety, and they've worked too hard to suppress that anxiety to let you resurface it. Sign number 12. You've experienced intense transformations. Others can't comprehend. Your life has probably included multiple complete reinventions, not small changes but total transformations, death and rebirth cycles, identities dissolved and rebuilt, core beliefs shattered and reconstructed. Most people change gradually, incrementally. But old souls transform in waves, intense periods of destruction followed by reconstruction, like phoenixes burning and rising repeatedly. This is because old souls came into this lifetime to accelerate growth. You've already learned the basic lessons in previous lives. This lifetime is about advanced curriculum, ego death, spiritual awakening, shadow integration, consciousness expansion. Jung wrote extensively about the individuation process, the journey toward psychological wholeness. But he noted that some people undergo this process more intensely and rapidly than others. These are the old souls, the ones who came here to evolve, not just to exist. Here's how intense transformation shows up. You've had multiple dark nights of the soul, periods where everything you believed shattered, where you lost your identity and had to rebuild from nothing, where you faced your shadow so completely you didn't recognize yourself afterward. You've walked away from entire lives, left careers, relationships, cities, identities that no longer fit, not impulsively, but decisively. When your soul knows something is complete, you can release it without hesitation. You don't fear change, you crave it. Stagnation feels like death to you. You need to be growing, evolving, transforming. Even when transformation is painful, it feels more alive than staying static. These intense transformations alienate people because most people build stable, predictable lives. They can't comprehend why you'd willingly destroy everything and start over. Why you'd choose growth over comfort. Your willingness to die and be reborn terrifies people who are desperately clinging to who they think they are. Because your transformations say identity is temporary, Change is constant, nothing lasts, and people who've invested everything in maintaining one static identity can't handle that truth. Now that you've seen the signs, let's address the harder truth. Being an old soul in this era is exhausting, isolating, often painful, because the modern world is designed for young souls, for people learning basic lessons about survival, success, and social belonging. The entire structure, capitalism, social media, consumer culture, achievement obsession, is designed to teach those lessons. But you've already learned them. So you're walking through a world optimized for a curriculum you've graduated from. It's like being an adult forced to repeat elementary school. Nothing challenges you in the right ways. Nothing addresses what you actually need to learn. Here's why old souls struggle. You're evolutionarily mismatched with your era. Your values, your questions, your needs don't align with what this time offers. You're seeking depth in a shallow world, meaning in a materialist culture, authenticity in an age of performance. You're lonely in ways others can't comprehend, not for lack of people, but for lack of resonance. You're surrounded by young souls learning lessons you mastered lifetimes ago. It's hard to connect when you're operating from different levels of consciousness. You're exhausted by having to translate yourself constantly, dumbing down your thoughts, hiding your depth, pretending to care about things that don't matter, just to fit in enough to function in this world. But here's what you need to understand. This struggle has purpose. Old souls incarnate in challenging eras for a reason. You're here to hold a frequency, to model a different way of being human, to remind young souls that there's more to existence than the material game. Your presence, even when it makes others uncomfortable, serves evolution. Every person who encounters you receives a transmission. There's depth beyond what you're seeing, questions beyond what you're asking, ways of being beyond what you've imagined. Most will reject that transmission, fear it, avoid it, but some, the ones ready to awaken, will receive it. And their evolution will accelerate because you are here, living authentically, refusing to shrink. What to do as an old soul. So what do you actually do with this understanding? How do you navigate being ancient in a young soul's world? First, stop trying to fit in. You won't. You can't. Your soul has evolved beyond this era's consciousness. Trying to force yourself into spaces designed for younger souls only breeds exhaustion and resentment. Second, find your soul family. They exist. Other old souls incarnated at this time, not many, but enough. Stop wasting energy on people who can't meet your depth. Seek the rare ones who can. Third, honor your need for solitude and depth. This isn't antisocial. This is soul maintenance. You need time alone to remember who you are. You need philosophical inquiry like others need food. Feed your soul what it actually needs. Fourth, pursue meaning over success. Your soul didn't come here to collect accomplishments. It came here to grow, to serve, to evolve. Follow what calls to your soul, not what impresses others. Fifth, trust your ancient knowing. When your intuition speaks, listen. When unexplainable knowing arises, trust it. Your soul has more experience than your conscious mind. Let it guide you. Sixth, accept that you'll be misunderstood. Most people won't get you. That's not your failure. That's evolutionary disparity. You're operating from a different level of consciousness. Misunderstanding is inevitable. Seventh, remember why you're here. You chose to incarnate at this time. Your soul knew it would be difficult, but it came anyway. Because this era needs old souls. Needs people who remember there's more to existence than materialism and performance. If you've made it this far, if every sign resonated like an echo from somewhere deep, there's something you need to understand. You're not broken. You're not dysfunctional. You're not too much or too deep or unable to just be normal. You're old, ancient, carrying consciousness that has traveled through multiple bodies, multiple eras, multiple versions of what it means to be human. And yes, that makes you different. Yes, that makes you lonely. Yes, that makes people fear you. But it also makes you essential. Carl Jung spent his life studying the evolution of consciousness, and he discovered that consciousness evolves through individuals, not through the masses moving forward together, but through rare individuals who reach new depths and hold those frequencies while others catch up. You're one of those individuals. An old soul holding a frequency this era needs but fears. Living proof that there's more to existence than the material game. Walking evidence that consciousness continues beyond death, that wisdom accumulates across lifetimes, that depth is possible in a shallow world. Your presence challenges everyone around you to question, what if there's more? What if this isn't all there is? What if my soul is older than this body? Most won't ask those questions. They'll choose comfort over consciousness, fear over evolution, shallowness over depth, but some will. And for those few who are ready to remember what their soul knows, your presence is the catalyst, the permission, the reminder that awakening is possible. So stop apologizing for your ancient eyes. Stop hiding your depth. Stop pretending to care about things your soul has outgrown. You're not here to fit in. You're here to remember and help others remember that they're more than this body, more than this lifetime, more than the role society assigned them. You're here to be living proof that the soul is real, that consciousness continues, that wisdom accumulates, that some of us have been here before and will be here again. And while young souls may fear you, old souls will recognize you. And in that recognition, you'll finally feel what you've been seeking your whole life. Home. Not a place, not an era, but the resonance of ancient consciousness recognizing itself in another. You're not lost. You've just been remembering this entire time. And every moment of loneliness, every experience of being too much, every instance of people fearing your depth, it's all been preparation for this understanding. You're an old soul, and this world needs you exactly as you are. If this resonated with your soul, do 3 things. First, subscribe. This channel is for old souls who've graduated from surface-level content and crave depth, truth, and recognition. Second, share this with one person, not everyone, just the one person whose eyes look ancient, who's been lonely their whole life without knowing why, who needs to hear, you're not broken, you're old. Third, drop remember in the comments, because your engagement helps this message reach other old souls still wondering why they don't fit, still thinking something's wrong with them, still waiting to remember. You're an old soul. You've always been different because you've always been ancient, and people don't fear you because you're threatening. They fear you because you're proof that their young soul understanding is incomplete. Stay ancient, stay deep, stay true to what your soul knows. You didn't come here to fit in. You came here to remember and help others remember too.